What is happening? That's a sequence of events. First, Uganda's bid for global leadership. Uganda officially launched a high-stakes diplomatic campaign to secure the position of United Nations Secretary General for veteran diplomat Dr. Olara, known globally for his work in human rights, conflict resolution, and protecting children in armed conflict. Otunnu represents Kampala's ambition to claim the world's highest diplomatic office.
When the government of Uganda intervened and blocked my forward movement of candidature, and they said, is there been a change of mind? Is there a new situation? Is this a serious commitment? Will they really do a serious campaign? And I said the best person to hear from is the president himself and the government of Uganda, because they are the ones who put forward this nomination.
So I hand Ambassador Olara Otunnu to you so that he can brief you himself.
When we move on to see the bureaucratic chokehold, that's the border restrictions and AMISOM leverage. Historically, Uganda has faced financial pressure from the United States, such as when the US reduced funding for the UPDF's AMISOM, now ATMIS, peacekeeping deployment in Somalia, despite protests from military leadership like General Muhoozi. Concurrently, as Uganda launched Otunnu's UN campaign, the US maintained strict Ebola travel restrictions and screening protocols on Ugandan officials, even after domestic health authorities declared the outbreak contained. This bureaucratic blockade effectively grounded Otunnu's team, preventing them from traveling to New York and international capitals to campaign.
All right, now you need to power everything on. Right, power. Now, do you hear that beat? There's a switch. Remember we talked about the little switch above the above where it plugs in on the back side? Ah, it's good. See, now the battery light is gone. Okay. Now it's on AC. Yes.
It's not so good.
This. If you do that now, it won't work. It will not work. It will not get the satellite. So the WAN cable is plugged into the modem's local area network. The systems together. Okay. So that is a connection between here and here. But this is the only port that is open on this. All these are shut down.
Just days before a major military decision, Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi, unveiled a memorial monument, the statue at Entebbe Airport honoring Jonathan Netanyahu, the older brother of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who died in the 1976 Entebbe raid. This highly publicized event served as an unmistakable signal of bilateral and military closeness to Israel. So was there a quid pro quo, troops for travel clearance? Shortly after the monument unveiling, the Ugandan parliament approved a highly controversial motion to deploy a UPDF contingent to the Gaza Strip. The troops were authorized under the guise of joining a US-backed international stabilization force to enforce a post-conflict ceasefire. The moment this military commitment was formalized, the US abruptly lifted the lingering Ebola travel restrictions, declared Uganda cleared and granted the necessary travel waivers, Dr. Olara and his team were immediately able to travel and commence their global UN campaign.
One point, that Honorable Speaker, Uganda has submitted the name of a Ugandan to the UN seeking that he becomes the Secretary General of the United Nations. It will be direct shooting in our own legs to say that Uganda should not participate in United Nations deployment. Besides, Uganda is a member of this nation and a member of the community of nations that is required to participate in such missions.
This is false. The UPDF is not going under United Nations peacekeeping program. They're going under the United States plan, a Donald Trump's plan, not a United Nations plan.
Very proud as Ugandans that Uganda People's Defense Forces is viewed as the anchor of stability in a sea of turbulence regionally and now globally. I know some of you may be worried. How come it is the President of the United States that is inviting and proposing that this international stabilization force,
the matter of deploying our soldiers to a very risky place like Gaza, where Israel strikes every now and again, Right Honorable Speaker, cannot be just casually passed here. We have to prepare enough.
Honorable colleagues, please. Honorable Samba, first take your seat. Okay? Please. Please. If you know you've come here to do casual work, go out. We are doing serious work here. Okay? We are.
It's very tough, very hard to live far away.
But when we get back on the other side, there is a collapse of the Gaza peace framework. The premise of the UPDF deployment was based on a US-backed peace framework. That's President Donald Trump's 15-point Board of Peace plan. However, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu categorically rejected this proposal. He declared that the Israel Defense Forces, that's IDF, will not withdraw from Gaza and will maintain full combat operations until Hamas is completely and fully disarmed.
ישראל שוללת את מסמך 15 הנקודות. שמעתי שאומרים לא אמרתם, ישראל שוללת.
Now let's bring you some breaking news. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he is rejecting US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace 15-point plan for Gaza and will not withdraw until Hamas fully disarms. Late last month, Trump announced that plan, but it was criticized by several people within Israel. Now, the Gaza Board of Peace was actually established in January, but it was criticized almost immediately as being a replacement almost for the UN Security Council. It's been in intense negotiations now with Hamas. One of the things that it has said publicly is that Hamas needs to disarm. That's what they've been talking about. Hamas has said they are...
Because Hamas views its weapons as its only leverage for survival, voluntary disarmament is virtually impossible. Consequently, there is no ceasefire and no peace to keep. So this brings us to the geopolitical stigma. This deployment occurs while Israel is facing immense international legal scrutiny. The United Nations has received independent reports accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza.
The Commission concluded that Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza and that it is continuing with that genocide.
And the International Criminal Court, ICC, has sought arrest warrants for Israeli leadership, including Benjamin Netanyahu.
I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes: starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts. It's alleged that these crimes were committed in the context of the ongoing armed conflict and as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza pursuant to a state policy.
The sequence of the Ebola restrictions vanishing the moment the UPDF Gaza deployment was approved is a textbook example of transactional realpolitik in global diplomacy. Public health protocols and financial aid, like the Hamison funding cuts, are frequently weaponized as soft power leverage. Mid-tier nations like Uganda use their battle-tested militaries as bargaining chips by trading military muscle to support a U.S. geopolitical objective. Kampala effectively bought diplomatic access, unlocking the international doors required for Otunnu's UN campaign. He reduced the state military deployments to a corporate-style exchange of services for diplomatic capital. Deploying the UPDF into Gaza based on their success in Somalia is a fatal strategic miscalculation. In Somalia, the UPDF fought a low-tech, asymmetric counterinsurgency against Al-Shabaab using light infantry tactics. Gaza, conversely, is the epicenter of high-tech 21st century warfare. It is a pulverized, hyper-dense urban landscape dominated by driven target acquisition, sophisticated drone swarms, and electronic warfare. A conventional African infantry force is entirely mismatched for this theater. Furthermore, because Netanyahu rejected the US peace plan and refused to withdraw, the UPDF is not entering a humanitarian buffer zone. They are stepping directly into an active, high-intensity crossfire where the occupying military power rejects the very framework the peacekeepers were sent to support. A humanitarian rights appreciation backing a global war zone. Uganda is attempting an impossible diplomatic balancing act. On one hand, it is promoting Dr. Olara, a man whose entire legacy is built on international law, human rights, and the UN Charter. On the other hand, it has erected a monument to Netanyahu's brother and deployed its military into a US-Israeli security architecture in a territory where the UN itself has leveled accusations of genocide. You cannot champion the ultimate defender of international law while structurally backing a contested, hyper-violent military occupation that defies international courts. To answer the question, is this how the world starts shifting into systemic conflict? That's world war. Yes, major global conflicts rarely start with a sudden explosion. They begin with incremental entanglements when smaller nations trade away their sovereign neutrality to act as frontline stabilizers for superpowers, they get sucked into proxy wars. By placing boots on the ground in a polarized geopolitical fault line, a nation ties its own fate to the survival and strategies of global superpowers, losing its independent agency in the process. Ultimately, the transactional bargain that cleared Otunnu's travel path will likely be the exact mechanism that destroys his candidacy. To become UN Secretary General, a candidate must survive the veto power of the UN Security Council's permanent 5, that's P5. That's China, and Russia, and potentially European powers like the UK or France, depending on shifting domestic politics, have distinct, often highly critical stances regarding Palestinian statehood and US unilateralism in the Middle East. By formally aligning its military with the US-backed pro-Israel stabilization force that bypass multilateral consensus, Uganda will deeply anger these global powers. Russia and China will likely view Otunnu not as an independent, neutral African diplomat, but as a representative of a state that actively serves as a military proxy for Washington and Tel Aviv. Consequentially, they will almost certainly use their veto power to block his path in trying to buy their way into the UN's top seat using military leverage. Uganda's leadership has functionally guaranteed they will never get it unless otherwise.